welcome back. What is it, episode 54?
What's up, shitbags? Welcome back. Episode 54. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll hit this real quick. As always, huge thank you to our sponsors, Toxic Suppression, Crew First Culture, Taylor Sins, Jobtown Graphics. Awesome people. Thank you for you guys for listening and watching. Like we've posted out on Facebook, we are really close to 1,000 followers, so that is awesome. But secondly, if you're watching the videos, hopefully you're tuning into YouTube because we aren't sharing them on Facebook anymore. But we've had a pretty great transition over there. So thank you guys. That's been pretty awesome seeing everyone seem to kind of seamlessly transition over to YouTube. So thank you for that. And we'll stop blabbing and bring in the guy because that's what everybody wants to hear anyway. So let's bring in Garrett. Hey, Garrett, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys?
Good.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Why don't you go ahead and get started? Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I started in the fire service 2007. Just recently graduated high school, was kind of trying to figure out where my life was going to go and what I was going to end up doing. And I started volunteering for a small department where I grew up. And then shortly after that, I moved to college. Just kind of kept pursuing the fire service, volunteered over here. And now I guess it'll be next week. Been 14 years for the same agency and just plugging away, trying to take it day by day and just go to one more fire.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll go ahead and jump right into the questions because we got a lot of good ones for you. Where did your passion for training come from?
I think it was something that it was just kind of the constant desire to continue to learn things and learn new stuff. But I'll tell you, the two classes that I look back on the most that kind of gave me the aha moments, if you will, that kind of made me realize that there was life outside the four walls of which I knew about, or the four walls of which I mostly understood or felt like I understood, was back in 2015. And that was going to Nozzle Forward for the first time. And then the Brothers in Battle VES Beyond the Door class.
Great
and
class.
Those were both, I think Nozzle Forward was in August and Beyond the Door was in October. And really like kind of in that 2-month window, a lot of, I don't want to say like myth, but a lot of like reality of realizing just exactly, I thought I had an understanding. You just kind of get into a spot where you're like, yeah, I think I'm starting to get this. And then you go to something that totally changes your perspective on it. And like I said, ever since then, it really just gave me the reality or the, kind of the concept of what's happening outside the four walls of your organization. It really just made me interested. And then I think from going to those classes and learning things and just wanting to bring it back and continuing to go to places, that helped out a ton. And then I think one of the big things with it was, you go places and guys would be interested in going. And there's a couple of guys on the job that I would just say to them, it's like, hey, you pick the class and I'll go with you wherever we're going.
Yeah.
And as, I think of like Mile High Fire Conference, there were a couple of times where I'd gone down, like I said, took the Beyond the Door class, came back, talked about it. Next year in the same class, but with somebody from the department that went down. And I talked about this the other day in a promotional exam, but really it kind of comes down to the fact of if mentors are willing to give you something and they're willing to share it, if it's just like kind of lorded and hoarded by you and just protected, like that's not the objective of what it is. It's meant to be shared and shared freely and passed along. So, I mean, ideally you're hopeful that you're at work, when shit goes down and things are going, but you never want to look back on something. And I personally don't want to look at it and think to myself, if I would have shared this with this person or this guy, would it have changed the outcome when I had the opportunity? You're never gonna have the opportunity to directly impact like every single person, but when someone's asking you about it, if you don't share it with them, I don't ever want to look back and be like, I wish I would have said this in that conversation,
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of what drove a lot of it is when you go outside and you find good things and you realize that it can relate to what you're doing. I think it makes it easier to want to come back and share those things and teach those things and just progress along. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to take care of succeeding generations below us and grow your agency. So that's kind of where it all, I guess in a summary, where it all started and hopefully where it's going.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned in your bio that you really wanted to continue to drive the American Fire Service forward.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Well, it's the running joke would be, right, we're in Wyoming, so like I'm still working on the dial up, still dialing up out here, and we're kind of that's the world. But no, I think the reality of it is just trying to share the message. And when we talk about that, it's just whatever needs to be addressed, whatever needs to be passed along. Like, to me, it's kind of crazy. We go some places and you ask people if they're familiar with the firefighter rescue survey, and we're 5,000 rescues on the board now.
Yeah.
And there's places where they kind of look at you like, I'm not sure about that. And I always reference kind of the FSRI studies between the interior exterior attack on victim survivability, the firefighter rescue survey. Like, people want data of everything, but it seems like there's places that are neglecting what I believe is the most important data, and that's going out the door and going to fires, right? We're studying other things and stuff like that as far as like timestamps, and really it's just at your fingertips. So by driving the American Fire Service and pushing it forward and things like that is, like I said, you're never going to get everybody on the same page, but just continue to educate places that it's not as open of an opportunity. Like the other day I was in a different town teaching a class, and where my brother and parents live, one of the guys reached out and he's like, hey, is there a chance that we could come to this class? I said, yeah, I'll get you guys some seats in it. It was kind of closed to a fire department only. Got him a couple seats, and then one of the deputy chiefs mentions, he says, hey, man, we really appreciate it. And I just told him, said, man, I think you guys are the most important fire department in North America, and I'll do anything and everything I could for you guys for free. Like, I want them to be the most dialed in fire department. If that means passing information along to them that I got places because they don't have the opportunity to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it all comes back to that open sharing of information and passing it along and mentoring people up.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that I hope that answers that. I feel like I can.
Yeah, that's great. That was a good
absolutely.
answer.
I want to circle back to, like, especially that firefighter rescue survey, because we've talked about it on here a lot. I mean, we've had Ladina on here, we've had all those guys there. I mean, we're from Wisconsin, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
They kind of got a home base in there, but even in Wisconsin, there's not many people that are not. I shouldn't say not many, but there's departments that don't even know it exists.
Yeah,
and it seems like there's just a shift, or at least there was for a while, of like the speculated data. It's like, well, if this happens, we could get really hurt. If we do this, this could happen, yada, yada, yada. And then it's like, you talk about firefighter rescue survey and you're like, okay, but it's not. Like, look at this actual data about the most, like you said, the most important part about our job is these are the rescues. This is where we're finding people, how fast we need to move, when we need to do these things in the operation. And then it's like, okay, yeah, but like, what if this happens? Then we've got to do this. Like, there's just, it seems very, very separate data-driven ideas.
Well, it's interesting too, because like I remember having a conversation with Cody Trestrail, and we were someplace, and it was just kind of after class, hanging out at the hotel. We were, kind of cussing and discussing some things, and it's interesting how he kind of, in a roundabout way, I'm paraphrasing what the conversation was. Is it's like, now the data is confirming what busy fire companies knew, or what busy fire companies had as far as like a mindset of where things are going. And I think it's interesting in a multitude of levels, whether you want to talk about what you're putting on the end of the line for a nozzle and what the different studies from the UL support and all these sort of things. There's always been busy companies or busy firehouses understood what worked and what didn't work, and everything else was kind of theorized because there wasn't the time and effort put into training to validate it was going to work, or there wasn't the run volume to validate that that's how it was going to go down. Now it's being studied at a different level where it's almost becoming the fact that like it's indisputable at some point, right? Like it's very, very hard to have an argument right now and tell somebody that you don't think to go to the bedrooms is the number one place to prioritize on a search. When I can go to the internet and very quickly type something in and say, well, these 5,000 rescues, 45% of the time they're there. So why not? You know, or just the analogy or the conversation of, should we be pushing hand lines or should we be in the hit and move the entire time? And the day old adage of like, well, I've never had to push a hallway. Did you leave the building? Yeah, I've been pushed out of fires. Did you try and push the hallway? No. Then you went to a fire that needed to push the hallway. You just didn't quite have that skill set or totally understand it, right? And so I think that's when I, back to this last question, when you talk about pushing the American Fire Service forward, it's all out there. At some point, and I don't say this in a negative way, at some point, ignorance just becomes negligence, and the inability to just go look it up and find the information for yourself to know, like I said, it's out there. The UL is spending more money than any fire department could ever replicate a study off of. The rescue survey is getting more data than one person could probably get in. Brian Brush is crushing it with the entire thing of finding those things and stuff like that. And then on top of it, you add the next one into it. You look at Data Not Drama from Bill Carey.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're making this many rescues. Here's where our interior line of duty deaths are happening. And it really starts to make that separation of, it's not 100 firemen dying on the interior of buildings. There's 4 2025 interior line of duty deaths. And the rescues are continuing to just go up and up and up and up. So like I said, as we continue to progress along, we just kind of continue to, what I think, and to use Cody's words, it made the most sense. He's like, well, at this point now, it's just validating what we knew. It's just now it's not my opinion or my experience against his opinion or his experience. It's becoming more universal.
Yeah. I think it's going to be extremely important to see the smaller, just kind of, you're busy, but not your extremely fire busy departments. That is the majority of the fire service take that data on. Cause like you said, it's the busy companies that knew that stuff. It's the smaller ones where we still got time to go around and just do the BS. We do our own inspection, the stuff like that, where it's like, you kind of fill your schedule of busy days because you're busy, but not busy, or you're not going to 100 fires a year, that it's like, we don't go to fires. We don't need to do this training. It's like, no, we still go to fires, and we should be paying attention to this data more than anybody else, because we don't have that confirmation. We don't have that experience to lay back on. We've got to rely on these busy companies that do go to fires every shift that can tell us what we need to be doing.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Moving on to the next one that we've got. What are some training topics that the fire service should focus more on?
Are we talking just like in general terms, or are you talking like specific to like places I work, or what are we looking at here?
I mean, we're talking about for your experience, so kind of a mix of both, either general or what you've experienced most.
Yeah, so I think I can say this because I can put myself in the same category, I feel like. And really what it comes down to is kind of wraps back up into the other question, or the last answer I gave, is I think there's kind of there's 3 camps, if you will, for the fire service. And unfortunately, all of us want to work in that just incredibly busy firehouse where, like you're saying, like every time we come to work, the expectation is, like we're actually going to go to a fire, not just like hoping to go to a fire,
Yeah.
And those are the guys that they're experienced because of where they work and the amount of runs they go to and the amount of fires they get a year. If you don't work in an incredibly busy firehouse and you're not going to fires every single week or every single month, or however you want to like break it down and things like that, if you're proactive in the firehouse, oftentimes a lot of that stuff, until you prove it, is theory driven. So an example being, we're talking about, like, I'm going to use an example where I work. The first in for the engine that I drive is plenty of 3-story center hall, garden level apartment buildings, unsprinklered, built in the late 60s, early 70s, didn't need it, things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a 300-foot stretch to the center apartments on the 3rd floor, and even the apartments off of that. And right now, the longest line on our engine that we don't have to take 2 lines that build together is a 200-foot line. So in the works of potentially making some changes and writing some proposals and things like that to help facilitate that. But at that point, oftentimes talk around the kitchen table turns into theory. So, hey, if we go to a fire today and it's on the 3rd floor, this is how I think's the best way we can handle this. So guys sit around, they theorize what it is and how it's going to work and how it's going to work for their company and things like that. And in the presentation I give, this is where I kind of talk about, these are expectations, right? We're sitting at the kitchen table. The officer in our system, the captain, says, hey, if we go to fire on the 3rd floor, this is my expectation. This is how we're going to handle business. We're going to stretch this line, add this off the end of it, or whatever the case is, right? However, when you talk about the training side of it, theory can only take you so far. And theory, oftentimes when the alarm goes off, when we go out the door, and that's the first time that we vetted or tested theory, is most likely not going to do well for us, right? Mm-hmm. And so the training I think that can be missing is you can probably look anywhere in the map of North America right now, in every single weekend, if you had the time off and the funding, you could go to a fire conference 52 times a year right now.
Yeah.
Every single weekend, go to a different place. And you can go get something from every single person and bring it back and things like that. But I think what it comes down to is that person you're taking the class from doesn't work in your agency, doesn't work shift, and doesn't work in your company. And so now when you go and you take a class and it's like, hey, here's how we can get to that 3rd floor center apartment on the center hall building, but we just come back and talk about it and theorize it, and we don't go out the door and get permission to go test it or get permission to go work on it and vet it within the company itself. It's just theory. And the other thing too, when it comes to expectations is, the 3 of us could have a conversation right now and we could put some kind of word out there. It was very limited visibility, or it was no visibility. And the 3 of us each have a little bit different perception in our head or perspective in our head of really what is, like, how bad is zero visibility, right? Well, when we take this theory and we talk about it, and like I said, cuss and discuss it, and then we go out and we implement it even at just a training level, not a drill, where it's like we're going to walk through it and train on it and get familiar with it before we drill on it. If we're the company, the 3 of us share the same experience that we just found to be successful, right? Not, oh, well, this, that, whatever the case is. Like, now we have it. Now we can kind of put it into a drill form, do a little bit quicker. And then it's like, hey, does anybody have any ideas that would make this a better option? Or is this kind of where we're at with it? And then the goal is when you leave, it's like, hey, when we go to any 3-story center hall, that's the A plan. If not that, then we're going to go with this. And we can kind of, if we have to, we deviate from it and things from that. So I don't think there's a lack of training going on across the country and things like that. Like, there's plenty of fire conferences and plenty of classes happening left and right. Where I think the lack comes down to is taking what you've learned and what you understand and bringing it back to wherever I'm going to put it in quotes, wherever your circle of influence is, whether it's your company, your shift, if you're big enough, your battalion, or maybe you're the fire chief and your job, right? Is bringing those things back and vetting it for how it's going to work for who you are and where you work based on the staffing you have and things like that, So when I met JD, I was in Michigan, and I was very surprised to hear how many people come up and ask you about things afterwards. And they're like, you're talking about like a 3-person engine company. It's like, well, yeah, what is it up here? Well, it's 2 of us. I'm like, oh, like, it's foreign world to me, take one, it's always interesting. Like, take one guy off our engine and it totally changes our game plan, where it's like, holy cow, like, this is going to be way different. Give us a guy and we're like, wait a minute, what do I do with this guy? You get in your system, you understand it, and they understand how 2-person companies operate better than most places, right? I don't work in a person with a 4. Every once in a while now, there's a 4th guy on it, but oftentimes where I'm at now, the 4th guy will just move over and make a 3rd person on the truck. But that's really where I think it comes down to is you got to take all this stuff, vet it for your company, take a look at it, figure out how it applies to your company. And then from there, like troubleshoot it. And there's sometimes you're like ideas are going to come up and they're going to be pitched and it's going to sound really great. And then you go mess around with it and it totally falls apart. And I think the reality of that is you look at it and you think to yourself, you're like, well, shit, I'm glad we did it like that and not pulling up with, fire blown out a window and realizing like, well, we really shit the bed on this. It didn't really pan out. So I think overall, that's where I would say there's probably taking everything you're learning and really vetting it and validating it for your company.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I learned that taking stuff back from trainings to get the better buy-in is coming back, having a discussion at the kitchen table or with your crew, modifying it to our needs and our equipment and staffing, and going out, training on it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll figure something else out. I just had a lot better buy-in than just go in there and say, hey, this worked there. It should work here. And that's where I stand on it, because they'll just say, fuck you.
Yeah.
If you actually, modify to your needs and your staffing, you can actually say, hey, it actually does work with us, and train on it and get everyone comfortable, because they don't know, because they didn't go to training. So training them up on it, you get really a better buy-in with your crew and your captain.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And that's the thing too, is like, years ago, when I don't even remember where I first saw it, but had access to the FDNY Force Entry Manual, reading through that. I remember someone asked me like, well, why are you reading that? The FDNY does, quite a bit more different force stuff. It's like, yeah, I get that. Like they have a 5-man rescue company or however many are out there and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean you can't take the chunks and pieces out of what they do for forcible entry and how it applies.
Yeah.
Same thing with their engine company manual. When their engine company manual came out, it was just a matter of reading it and understanding how their engine works. Fast forward a year and a half later, now the system I work in, the agency I work for, stretches the exact same high-rise bundles off of a high-rise hookup that the FDNY does, and so there's nothing wrong with just getting education. And sometimes you go out there, and I'm not going to say you don't gain anything from it. You definitely learn stuff, but you kind of take a seat back and you look and you're like, I learned some stuff, but it doesn't directly translate to what my department is capable of doing, and I have those conversations with guys. Sometimes you ask them some things and, they're like, oh, it's simple. I just get on the radio and tell the chief I need a second alarm. And I'm like, that's not happening where I work. Like, I need a different game plan than what that is. So.
Awesome. Last specific question that we have for you. What do you believe separates departments that perform well on the fire ground from departments that might struggle?
Well, I think anytime you straight up look at it from an aspect of a busy company, right, is probably by default going to perform well and perform better, just because, like I said, they're gaining that experience. So going back to kind of the previous one, if you're not getting the experience from the fact of you're just working in a busy firehouse and you're going to a fire every single week and things like that, like how do you generate your own, I'm going to call it like experience in quotes. Like my buddy Ramagus says, right? Like, man, we can't schedule experience or there'd be fires all over the country. But at the same time, like to an extent, I can schedule opportunities to go out and do those things, right? So kind of what I see with it is people that have standards. All right. And when I say people, I'm referring to like companies like, hey, this is how we operate as a company, and how we get to how we're going to perform to that standard or how we're going to operate as that company is we have to go out. Like I said, we got to vet some of these things. I know for a fact I've brought things up in the past where on paper it looked great and we went out and messed around with it. And it's like, yeah, this just doesn't pan out quite like we thought it would. And sometimes it's as simple as like, I say simple, but your rig spec alone could hinder your ability to do something of how you want to do stuff. An example being, we were looking at changing what model of 1 3/4 we were going with. And, one of our pre-connects is a 200 and one of them's a 150. And then the 200 comes off the rear, all the space in the world in the rear. get to talking about it, it's like, well, yeah, if you want, in my opinion, you know, the top of the line, like the best hose on the market, like we get True ID and we put it in there. Well, 150 feet of True ID fits in the rig spec we have, 200 feet doesn't. So now it's going to impact operationally how we operate. So when you go to them and say, well, we got to, you know, go from a 200 foot pre-connect to a 150 pre-connect, and they say, no, we're sticking with a 200. Now we're right back into that, you know, vetting phase and things along those lines. So, and then I think more than anything, when it comes down to it, and I can't speak for everywhere because I'm not listening to everybody's fires or hearing what's going on the tailboard after everybody's fires and things like that. But the reality of it is when you go to a fire, like, it's not going to be perfect every single time. Like, shit's going to happen. Things are not going to go as well as you can. You know, a buddy of mine who's a battalion chief here getting ready to retire out, he calls it kind of fumble time. You know, like, you're going to have fumble time and might have to punt on 1st and 10. But at some point, we've got to sit down and we've got to take ownership of the things that didn't go well and use those as our opportunities to get out and build those single company trainings. Like, if we're honest with ourselves after a fire and we kind of look back and everybody comes up with one thing that they're like, yeah, I you know, I'll admit I sucked at this, or this didn't go as well as I planned, or it wasn't as I predicted it to be, and things like that. If one person on that company each says one thing, it just gave me 3 things that we can go do as a company. It doesn't have to be, I got to go bang all 3 of these things out in 1 tour at 3 hours a piece and things like that. But we can take opportunities to do things. Hey man, Mike, my stretch sucked. Sounds good. If we go to a residential alarm on this deal and there's nothing showing, I just want you to stretch a line anyways to get 1 more rep in the front yard, right? Mm-hmm. But when we sit back and we think to ourselves, like, yeah, it didn't go well, but you know, if I say something in front of the company, like, I'll be embarrassed, or like we're hesitant to bring things up and just take ownership of it, that's when things continue to kind of go to shit. And nobody really takes ownership for it or says, like, hey, this is how we could be better of it. And that's where I think we start to lose that edge. Like I said, is that company of trying to really hone things in. And I don't know that anybody out there as a company officer has expectations for their crew that every single fire they go to or every single run they go to, that there will be no mistakes and nothing, like nothing could ever possibly go wrong. I just don't think that's the American Fire Service, right? Like, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, and then on top of it, like, being that officer, being that ACO, or those people that are willing to say, like, hey man, we can't just sit around all day and expect ourselves to be better. You know, at some point we're going to have to, if we want to be a better company, at some point we're going to have to, you know, get out and go do some things. And, in my opinion, all right, and it's just that, like, there's no better way to get in the game when the alarm goes off than the chief knowing that you're out putting in work to be better about what is happening, right? And I don't say this negatively, they can say what they want about how they assign things and everything like that. When they pull up and this thing's shitting and getting and blowing and going and everything like that, and they're giving somebody a critical assignment that they want done, taken care of in a timely fashion, when they key up that mic, it goes through the back of their head who's riding that engine that day, or who's riding that truck that day, right? Like, it goes through it. And if you want to get in the game on things, you got to get out and get caught training and working on things and being able to explain what you're doing, not just sitting at the, you know, kitchen table or hanging out every time the chief comes by and it's like, well, you know, we were going to go work on some things, we just hadn't got around to it yet. It's been a busy day. It's like, got 1 run on the books, you know, like, what's the hold up here? So yeah, that's just kind of like, I guess, my perspective on it. And like I said, everybody wants to work in a busy company, but sometimes you got to create your own busyness in vetting those things and making your company better. And how I think that can happen is it can, I don't know if the right term is this, but you can kind of organically have that happen by just taking ownership and saying, hey, these are the things that I made mistakes on the last fire. And sometimes it's simple. Like, when I say simple things can lead to complicated deals. Yeah. It doesn't have to be this crazy elaborate. It's like, dude, I just absolutely got jammed up masking up. It's like, yeah, sounds good. Like, let's everyone grab your stuff. We're just going to do 20 minutes worth of mask ups. Maybe it's in a workout. Like I kind of like doing skill sets post rounds of a workout and things like that. And we can talk about that if you guys want. But really, at some point, it could just be as simple as like, yeah, I just kind of messed this up. And it's not hey, that's your problem. Like, you figure that out. If he messed it up, I can mess it up on the very next fire. So let's just work on it together and get it taken care of. And like I said, it could easily lead to, 20, 30 minutes. I remember we carry Gustin packs on our engines, 100-foot, 1.75 inch, essentially loaded like the New York. And that's kind of our game plan for going long when the 200 doesn't meet it. The driver will bring that bundle up. Once the line stretched out, the firefighter grabs it, makes the stretch, and goes from there. And that was a deal one time, kind of to wrap it up and as an example. And I talk about it in the classes. We're talking one morning with a brand new guy. He rides the engine with us now. And we were talking about, hey, if we go to a 3-story breezeway, these addresses, 200 feet's not going to cut it. So we need you to basically go vertical with 100 and drop it down the well hole in the exterior stairwell. And the driver's going to stretch the line to you and make the connection. It's like, okay, sounds good. And he's like, I've got some questions on it. And really what it turned into is the captain that day is like, just get on the rig. It's like, okay. So we get in, we drive up there, 30 minutes later, we're 4 to 5 stretches in on the entire thing. We've answered his questions. And now it's like, we got some impromptu training. Everyone had the opportunity to brush up on it. And now we pull up to that 3-story breezeway anywhere we're going. And like, here's the A plan, here's the B plan. And like we talked about, everybody has the same experience. We're all on the same page now. We know how we're operating. So,
absolutely. But let's circle back a little bit when you're talking about that like after action, because we've talked a lot about on here in previous episodes of that the fire. No one got hurt and the fire went out. Like it's just that crutch. Like kind of like you talked about being able to talk about your failures maybe and can be big or small, but because the flip side is you're gonna lose that experience to learn from if you don't. Because everyone sees everything on the fire ground. Maybe not everything, but 90%. So if you fumbled on your mask ups, somebody else saw it. We're at the after action. Everyone's talking. Hey, no one went hurt. Fire went out great. Well, now a week later, that person told everyone, hey, did you see at that fire how he just totally messed up his mask up? Like now it's just a rumor, and now it's not progressive. It's just oh, hey, he messed up. He did this. He did that. Like. It's just you gotta catch it right away. I feel because it goes everywhere in the fire service. It seems it's everyone's gotta kind of look, and whether it was nefarious in nature or not, it gets brought up. Someone's like, "Oh, hey, look at that!" And
some things that are something new that's come around this year that we're doing is every fire, the crew that was the first in crew on that fire, and the chiefs that if they're there or not, we sit down and have a conversation, like your after action report. Say, hey, what did I feel as a chief level down? And then something funny, I had my camera on, and the last one we did, you see me coming around the house and face planting because the stupid Christmas decorations are in the front yard. But you can see, hey, this is what I messed up on. Here's a camera of it. Here's my video of it. And then you can also in that video, you can see other people working and say, oh, you can actually bring the picture together because 9 times out of 10, you're going to forget something because your adrenaline's so high.
Yeah.
So just watching the camera footage back and kind of like a professional sports team watches their plays, we can watch that camera footage and, hey, this is what we got to work on. It took this how many minutes to get the line stretch or whatever. But I think having the cameras in place too, to kind of watch that game footage to really hone in on the skills that we need to work on. I think that's how you create a company level training.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the first place that I saw it where it was really kind of taken off was with Brush, Midwest City. And I know Caleb Bryant helps him out with it, things like that now. And we have a captain on our department trying to work on some kind of a policy with helmet cams, whatever you want to call it, like a body cam, however we're going to put it on you and things like that. But we're not quite to that level, but you're right. The video never lies. Like, it tells the truth and things. And one of the things that Started in 2026 here. Right now we're 2 fires in on it, but started something called basically the Casper Fire Search Survey. And in last year, we started a search SOG, and that SOG says for a single family dwelling from arrival to calling that we're going to the interior, our system is once you go on scene, you'll give your assignment either en route or when you get there by the battalion chief, and then you basically do a PAR entering the building, giving them your unit, your assignment, and where you're entering from and things like that. So what our system says is we have 90 seconds from air brake to entering the building. And then if I'm assigned search, I have 8 minutes from air brake to a primary all clear, or we're reporting that victim, removing them, and then headed back into search or the backfill. It just, that's kind of case by case basis on it.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've done is we don't necessarily have the cameras, but we have access to every mic transmission on both our dispatch, station alert, and our TAC channels, along with the 911 calls. So took the content out of the rescue survey, eliminated everything that directly relates to the questions for the rescue, and then added 2 questions at the end, basically 3 questions at the end of it. So the rescue survey questions are designed to give us the demographics of the building we're going to, the conditions of the fire, which we found when we got there, the smoke, all those sort of things. And then it wraps up with, you're supposed to report your time in 30-second increments. Did it take you 0 to 30 seconds to get inside, 0 to 1 minute, 1 minute to 1:30? And then it kind of breaks it down a little less and less on that. And then same thing, like what your primary all clear is. And so we don't right now have the cameras to go off of it. But the goal is a year from now to take a look at it and say, here's what's really jamming us up on getting the 8 minutes. And it's these demographics right here. It's a well-involved fire on a 2-story, and we're having problems getting to the 2nd floor to search because we're doing it with one company versus the opportunity where when we split, the truck takes the fire floor and the rescue takes the floor above, or however it looks. Now we're meeting the expectation of the 8 minutes or less. And then the other one too that gets talked about, or that I can see being a topic of conversation as it grows is, hey, it took you, we're sitting afterwards, like we're looking at this, and it's like, hey Bryce, it took you 2 minutes to get to the inside. We got a 90 seconds. What went down? You're like, well, we showed up and the whole front of the house was off. So we went to the rear to see if we could make the rear, and we couldn't get back there either. So we decided to go with the hand line in the front. So it just took me an extra 30 seconds to size this fire up to make sure I knew where we were going. And it's like, okay, sounds good. So the hang up with it was a decision-making model versus, we pulled in and I asked you, hey, it took you, 2 minutes and 30 seconds to get inside. What happened? Well, we were on the wrong TAC channel in the cab. So when we got there, I had to face-to-face with the battalion to get my assignment and like things that are fixable, right? And then like you're talking, Brendan, like, here we go. Now we're going to have a conversation, and it seems like the simplest thing, but that could be the training of the day of making sure everybody's in the right page, doing all those things, how to get on the right TAC channel as you're putting your air pack on, and just things like that. And we've had some of the simplest trainings in firehouses before where guys just ask, hey, we have a seatbelt policy. I have to wear my seatbelt, and I don't want to do my bottom waist strap because it gets hung up until I get off the truck. It's like, that sounds good. 5, like not even that. We're talking like 3 minutes of instruction of here's how you can get your air pack on with your seatbelt on. 30 minutes total and 10 reps later. And now they're like getting off. It's one less variable they have to worry about getting to take care of things, So we're not to the point of body cams and things like that here, helmet cams, however we're going to look at it. But it's interesting when you ask places how much people are wanting to track information and seek information out and things like that specific to where they're at, to see kind of where they're lining up with other places. And really, I think more importantly, the gold standard with that is the 8 minutes for us was directly decided off of the data from the firefighter rescue survey.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great application of that data. It's circling all the way back to the beginning of this when we were talking about that, because Data's just data unless you turn it into something. So
Yeah,
that's awesome.
and I'll tell you this: if the agency I work for waits to get 10 confirmed rescues to build a data set of that, we're gonna wait quite a while.
Yeah.
But the one thing I will say, in commercials or not, or things like that, if we fill out a survey for every time we search a building with the mindset that if we would have found somebody based on this pace right here, excluding outside variables, like this is the pace of which we're searching that we want to be able to make the rescue and get it out within that timeline that supports what the rescue survey is saying. So we're using the nation as the rescue survey to build all the data points that we don't necessarily have or are going to be able to just gather in a quick amount of time. And now we're taking our searches and being like, how do we stack up with where this is? And then, the goal being, when it happens, we're meeting the expectations of which we've set.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, Brendan's got some generic questions for you now that we can go before we wrap this up.
Sure.
All right. So the first kind of generic question we got, you can take this however you want to take it, but it is, why are we here?
So I'm a big quote person. Like if you guys sit in my presentation, there's, I don't know, I think like 7 or 8 different quotes. And for me, quotes are a couple of things. One, it's to cite my sources. The quote itself is oftentimes something that gave me the wavelength, if you will, to kind of go down that way, but it's also what I heard from somebody. So one thing that I kind of put out there, and I wish I could remember who said it, is like, you were never drafted to the American Fire Service, right? Like nobody put a gun to your head and said, hey, you will join the fire department or else type thing, So when it really comes down to like, why are we here? I think that's more of like a deeper personal question for every single person to like, the more importantly, like answer within yourself is to find out, like, why am I here? And the goal being is we're there for the right reasons, right? We're there to protect the citizens and all the things that we take in our oath. We're not there because the fact that, the schedule kicks ass or the meals are great or like all the things that go with it. And I think that on top of that, kind of like the why are we there, that if it's not for the right reasons, that will be vetted and shown as time progresses along and things like that. It's pretty hard to bullshit bullshitters. And as a result of it, like things will see through. And so I don't know, I guess just that's a little bit different route than just your traditional, like, I feel like when I saw that one, when you guys kind of kicked it over, I just want to repeat what a lot of the people said, but really I think what it comes down to is you got to find your why, and I think more importantly, like when you can find your why of why you want to be on the fire department and why you want to be involved in these things and stuff like that is a driving force of what's going to drive your career in a direction that you can look back on later on and look at it from one of two ways. Like, hey, I had a successful career because this matched my why and this is what I did to meet it. Or, you might look back on it and think it's not as successful because you couldn't identify, you didn't know what you thought was necessary to be able to come back and say, like I answered all the questions. Like I took care of all the business of why am I here when I left that place and, hung it up for the last time.
I think having your why kind of pushes you further into your career or past challenges a little bit better. So just falling back to your why am I doing this? Why am I waking up at 3 a.m. to pick grandma up? Because you get to fall back in your why. And I think, has a positive attitude going forward.
Yeah. And then like one of the things that I touch on in, like I said, the presentation is I like to ask people right from the get-go, like, hey, like what is your culture? Like the agency you work for, what is the culture of that place? Or you can even bring it down to, what, if you're a fire chief, what's the culture of your fire department? If you're a battalion chief, what's the culture of your battalion? If you're a company officer, what is the culture of, your company? And what I find interesting is oftentimes you get mixed messages back from people that work in the same crew or agency or shift and things like that. And then when you look up what a culture is, the very first thing it talks about is shared values, goals, beliefs, and practices. And it's like, that's not shared amongst anybody when you go in and you say, hey, Bryce, what's the culture of your crew? And you're talking about it. And then Brennan, you're like, well, wait a minute. I thought it was this, and you guys work on the same crew, right? And so I think from outside of just a personal perspective, and your why towards the mission probably will never change. Meaning, like, you are there for the citizens, you're there for all those things. That's what we're hopeful for, right? But as your career progresses and you move, from the back seat to the driver's seat to the officer's seat, and you progress along and things like that, the why that continues to drive you forward may look a little bit different outside of the runs when you're talking about the firehouse itself and things like that, right? Like, as a company officer, your why of why you do things the way they are in the firehouse is to, mentor the crew beneath you and do all the things that you would have wanted when you were a younger guy, or to be taken care of and things along those lines. So I don't know that the why changes necessarily for the mission of why we're here, but I do think it's worth it when you take a look back of, as you progress through your career, your why can vary with things and go from there.
For sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. That brings us to our last two questions that we have here. So the first is the question from our previous guest for you, and then the second will be you coming up with a question for our next guest, Jared Sergey. So first question from our last episode with Jonathan Jarvis is, do you have a 3 to 5 minute drill that covers multiple disciplines for your engine, truck, whatever company?
So, yeah, we talk about like 3 to 5 minutes. I'm going to put a little asterisk next to it. It's 3 to 5 minutes repeatedly. But the one thing that we will do from time to time as a company is, I work in Wyoming. The weather's not always the greatest, and we get into things like that. But oftentimes, if we don't have, like, let's say we'll go back to stretches or things like that. When we're talking about a single skill set, one of the things that I enjoy doing is we'll write some form of a workout that is often a 3 to 5 minute round, with the idea that I'm going to take this skill set we talked about. And, like, I'll give you an example. We were talking the other day on the truck. There was 2 of us on there, and that's common for us, is to run a 2-person truck. And we were like, hey, if we're I can't even say the first in truck because we're the only truck here, but, like, if we're showing up with the first in company, if we're ahead of the hand line, the driver's responsible for a can and irons, and the officer is going to be responsible for a hook and a Halligan. And because we're ahead of the hand line, we're taking the can, we're going to go to the front door and start to work our way back and attempt to locate the fire, and then kind of push it back, or, like, communicate it back and kind of go from there. If we're not ahead of the hand line, the engine's out in front of us, we're dropping the can off. So the driver's responsible for irons. The officer's taking the same hook and a Halligan and now grabbing a ladder for access. The reason why I say a ladder for access is if it's a 2-story, we carry 16 and a 24. So we take the 24 for that. If it's a 1-story trailer house, things like that, we carry a rescue pit ladder, anywhere from 7 to 10 is what we can get out of it. So we're just taking a ladder to gain access into a space if we're choosing to VS and go from there, right? This is all theory based. This is kind of what we thought was going to pan out. So how we vetted it was we would do a workout to the point where we would get to a point, like I said, we felt like we would spike our heart rate up to where we get off the rig, it's a mirrored heart rate, and now we have to go find the tools. We'll carry out on a small evolution inside the firehouse. And again, we're trying to hit that 3 to 5 minutes. Now, if that's just a single one, that's fine. But oftentimes when we incorporate in a workout real quick, as we're putting it away, it's like, hey, what are your thoughts on this or this? Yeah, let's try it this time. And that's oftentimes like 5 to 6 rounds. So it translates somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes with a workout, skill set at the end of it. And we're trying to vet what we believe worked out when we can't go to out of the firehouse to go do these things and just show up at a single family house and start throwing ladders to windows and doing things like that. So that being said, that's kind of where it leads to. And the skill set just basically changes from time to time. We have found that it kind of, I shouldn't say kind of, like it vets things and takes, like I said, that theory away from it with the idea of like, hey, how far do you think if we're exhausted or, we pull up and our heart rate's high, how far can we carry a 35 with a 20 ladder package to go to the roof with 2 saws on it? And you take off after sprinting, 15 calories on the bike, doing a sled push and like a farmer's carry back. And now you build this ladder package and take off walking and you're like, this sucks, this isn't realistic or things, along those lines. So I would say that 3 to 5 minute deal, that's kind of what I think I kind of stretched the rules on a little bit, but that's really what we're trying to get for that goal is to repeat it a couple of times. And the idea is when we show up on scene, that now in that first 3 to 5 minutes, we're still at a point where at that point, we're not so exhausted of just getting in and doing things that we're still able to like work on it and kind of progress and go from there. Outside of that, my other one too is just taking like 3 to 5 minutes in the beginning of the day and just masking up with your gloves on and moving. And I really, it just kind of gets you in the groove on some things. Inevitably, by changing variables of how fast I'm moving or walking through things or, just kind of going through that, I'm indirectly going to slip up on something. And when I slip up on that, my hood gets hung up, things like that. Now it gives me something just to focus on and practice with and kind of go from there. But that's kind of my like quick 3 to 5. And if it's not one of those, if we're on the engine or we're doing something and we leave a medical call and somebody makes a comment about like, man, that'd be a difficult stretch with all that shit in the yard or kind of whatever the case with it is. If we can't make that stretch there, we can go back to the firehouse, try and replicate it as best we can, take all the snow blowers and lawnmowers and that kind of stuff back and give that newer guy, like, here you go. Like training doesn't have to be overly complicated an hour. Sometimes just getting something that's 20 minutes long or, going to a medical call. And like I said, in those 3-story center halls, the ambulance takes off and it's like, hey, question for you. How far is it from here to the rig? Well, I'm not sure. Okay, well, let's talk about how we can figure it out. And you just talk about how to estimate stretches based on apartment doors and floors and things like that. And then it dawns on them. They're like, well, we don't have a 300-foot pre-connect. Yeah. So now let's talk about how this is going to happen. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. You're available for the next run in your area, and you're just using the medical calls that come in to give you the next things you can do. And so kind of a long, like, I guess my answer took longer than the 5 minutes I had to do the drill, but just kind of a couple of them there that, kind of take what you run into in the day-to-day world of things and just put it on fire and see what it looks like.
Absolutely. I like it. That's awesome. Well, last thing that we have is your question for Jared. So let's hear it. What you got?
Yeah. Well, I can use this one because I know Jared, and if I didn't know who the guest was, I don't think I could use it. But I think you guys should ask him what inspired him or what motivated him to write his book.
All right.
See if we can dig into the brain of what transpired there that led to, because I don't like, I've never debated writing a book. Like, I don't know if anybody, as a matter of fact, I know nobody.
I can barely read a book. I don't know why I
write it. Then I would write it. Would just have to be like
pictures.
But I don't think that writing a book is something that you just decide you're going to do. And in like a couple weeks, you're like, hey, here it is. Like, it's all kicked out. Like, I'm sure it's a pretty lengthy process. And at times there's probably times where you look at it and you're like, dude, is this worth all of this, of all the different readings and things like that? So, yeah.
Brennan, I think you can make a killer coloring book.
I could fucking call her, dude.
Awesome.
When you make one, send one out here. I got some guys that'll eat the crayons. So
Fuck, I do too. We got a couple of guy Marines now.
I'm being sarcastic with that. I work with a lot of really good dudes. So
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the last part we have here is what we just call the kitchen table. So it's just where you can shoot the shit, either any shout outs that you want to give, any topics you want to dive a little bit more into that you didn't get, trainings to shout out, people to shout out, any of that. The rest of the time is yours.
yeah. Well, there was one I think in the questions of like trainings or places you've gone to you'd recommend or something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What was that one again?
What training or conference has been your favorite to attend?
Yeah. So I'll tell you guys this, shameless plug for firemanship. Dude, when I first went Beyond the Door for the first time, and then things kind of progressed in a few more BIB classes, and then my first year at firemanship 2019, and have gone every year since then that it's happened, you know. If there's, in my opinion, a one-stop shop of all the places you could go to get a little bit of everything possible, I think firemanship's the place to go. But absolutely. I really wanted, I also wanted to touch on October of last year, I had the opportunity with 3 other guys from our department. We were able to get into fire combat at FDTM out at Jim's place. And
it's a good class.
Man, there's no place like that. There's no place like FDTN. And if you're on the hold on, let me preface this, right? Like when I say if you want to go test your skills and things like that, somebody could say, hold on a second here, like I could go to smoke divers, I could go to One Bad Tour, I could do all those things. Like I can't speak to those. I've never been to either One Bad Tour, I've never been to a smoke divers program, anything like that. But if you want to test your basic fire skills of going to real fires in conditions that, you know, you're kind of like, yeah, I've been to some good fires. And then you go out there and you're like, well, these are good fires, you know?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the fire combat, just any of those. If you get the opportunity to go. Like I don't think you'll ever look back on and regret a trip to FDTN or a trip to firemanship based on how things happen, you know? So those are definitely some places. Like I said, if you're listening to this is kind of like maybe newer stuff to you, and you're not, you know, you haven't left the 4 walls of your agency or haven't got out and about and explored new things and stuff like that. Like, do it. I understand that it's not cheap at times. Your department might not have the budget to take care of things and stuff like that, but ask around. What I mean by ask around is very few of these conferences have the mindset that they wouldn't do something to help somebody out and, you know, help them get a hotel room or room them with somebody or help out with tuition cost. I mean, if people remember the first time firemanship came back, you could go back for $1. All right. Like it was never about making money. 5 days of training, 3 days of lecture, 2 days of hands-on for $1. Like it's never going to be cheaper than that, you know? And, you know, I been fortunate enough to help Kurt and the CFT with some CFT green team stuff, things like that. When he launches those conferences for $200, you know, I mean, paying $100 a day down there. Yeah. You know, so it's all right. Like work an overtime shift, get outside the 4 walls of your place, go take a look at some things, and just kind of continue to grow it and go from there.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for taking some time to come and share some knowledge, Garrett. That was awesome, and we really appreciate anytime people come on and share some of that stuff. So,
yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for the opportunity, and hopefully somebody gains something from it. That'd be the goal.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Take your time out of your day, man.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Again, thank you, Garrett, for coming on. And as always, don't be a shitbag.
Don't be